Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So what's the difference between visualization and imagination? Let's find out in this lesson. We'll learn the difference between these two words by looking at their meanings, usage, and then finally some examples of each. So let's begin with their individual meanings. First is visualization. It's the formation of mental images by the mind. First, visualization is more concrete, while imagination is more abstract. For example, when you visualize something, you usually picture it in your head very clearly. When you visualize something, you usually try to picture it as accurately as possible. On the other hand, imagination is more creative, and you might imagine things that are impossible or unreal. For example, you might visualize yourself running a race in order to get yourself prepared mentally. You can choose what you want to visualize and how long you want to visualize it for. Imagination is more free. You might not know what you're going to imagine until it happens. On the other hand, imagination is more spontaneous. You might imagine things without any particular reason. He is coming up with original ideas and then putting them onto canvas. As you can see, both are important mental processes that allow us to create mental images, explore new ideas and concepts, and make believe. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. Thanks for watching. Visualization is more concrete and focused, while imagination is more abstract and open. Visualization is more calming, while imagination can be exciting, but also a little bit overwhelming. Visualization is more visual, while imagination can involve other senses as well. Both are important parts of the human experience, and both can be used for good or for bad. This is an example of imagination because the artist is using his creativity to come up with something new and unique. 2. The scientist uses her imagination to develop new technologies. She isn't just working with what already exists, she is coming up with new ways to improve people's lives. This is another example of imagination. The scientist is using her creativity to solve problems and make the world a better place. 3. The child uses his imagination to play pretend. He might use a box to represent a car or a spaceship. This is an example of imagination because the child is making believe that something is true, even though it is you. Children are naturally very imaginative, and they use their imagination to have fun and to learn about the world around them. For example, you might imagine what it would be like to live in a different time period. For example, you might imagine a world where everyone gets along, or a world where animals can talk. You might see a specific object or scene. On the other hand, imagination is more abstract. When you visualize something, you usually concentrate on one thing at a time. For example, you might visualize a specific object or scene. Imagination is more open. When you imagine something, you might come up with a lot of different ideas or possibilities. When you visualize something, you usually focus on positive thoughts and outcomes. This can help you relax and feel more at ease. Imagination can be exciting, but it can also be a little bit overwhelming. When you imagine things, you might come up with so many different ideas that it can be hard to choose which one to focus on. For example, you might imagine a new invention that can do many different things. 1. The athlete visualized himself winning the gold medal. He pictured himself crossing the finish line and raising his arms in victory. This is an example of visualization because the athlete is creating a mental image of himself winning the race. He wants to visualize success so that he can feel more confident and prepared when it's time to compete. 2. The student visualized the material she had to memorize. She closed her eyes and imagined herself giving a perfect presentation. This is also an example of visualization. The student is creating a mental image of herself giving a great presentation. By visualizing success, she is able to reduce her anxiety and improve her chances of actually giving a good presentation. 3. The manager visualized the company's new product launch. He imagined all of the different steps involved in bringing the product to market. This is an example of visualization. The manager is creating a mental image of the new product launch so that he can plan and prepare accordingly. Visualization helps him to see the big picture and to anticipate potential problems. When you imagine something, you might come up with a new idea or a concept that has never existed before, and it might be more difficult to picture it in your head. When you visualize something, you create a picture of it in your head. However, it also includes creativity. Imagination involves creating new ideas or concepts that may not have existed before. For example, you could use your imagination to invent a new game, or to come up with a solution to a problem. Your imagination can also be used to make believe. For example, children often use their imagination to play pretend. They might use a box to represent a car or a spaceship. They might also use their imagination to create imaginary friends. So imagination is more than just creating mental images like visualization. It also involves creativity and the ability to make believe. For example, when I say the word tree, you might form a mental image of a tree in your head. You may picture a tall green plant with a brown trunk and lots of leaves. This is what we call visualization. It's forming a mental image of something. Next, imagination. Now, imagination is similar to visualization. Here are some other ways in which visualization and imagination differ from one another. Next, visualization is more visual. It involves forming mental images that you can see in your mind's eye. While imagination can be visual, it can also involve other senses, such as hearing, touch, smell, and taste. For example, you might imagine what it would sound like if trees could talk, or what it would feel like to walk on clouds. Another difference between visualization and imagination is that visualization is more realistic. Next, visualization is more focused. Next, visualization is more intentional. When you visualize something, you usually do it for a specific reason. Another difference between visualization and imagination is that visualization is more controlled. Another difference between visualization and imagination is that visualization is more calming. Alright, now let's look at some examples of visualization and imagination. First, we'll look at visualization. Now, let's look at some examples of imagination. 1. The artist uses his imagination to create beautiful paintings. He isn't copying anyone else. So that's the difference between visualization and imagination. Now, check out this video on the top 10 benefits of visualization.